Okay, so welcome to Brain Awareness Week. My name is Dr. Eric Chudler. Just before we get started, I want to tell you a little bit of story about Brain Awareness Week. It started about more than 20 years ago, and everyone's been hearing about this coronavirus and washing your hands so you don't get sick and things like that. Unfortunately, here at the University of Washington, the students are not meeting. They actually had to cancel in-person meetings. And so this is the first time in more than 20 years that I haven't been able to have a real Brain Awareness Week at the University of Washington. Everybody who's on here was invited. And unfortunately, we just couldn't host you here. So we're going to try this video conference instead, and you can ask me questions through the chat box after I'm finished. And we'll see how it goes. But everyone who's just joined, please get a pencil and paper ready because there will be some questions for you that I have for you to answer. So I guess let's get started. Can everyone, again, in the chat box, just let me know if you can see my slides. Can everybody see the slides? Or just raise your hand. Good, I see everybody just typed in yes, good. I'm gonna try to make it full screen for you. I might lose the chat box for a second, but hopefully it will still work. So let me try that. Okay, it should be everybody full screen. Does that look good for everybody? Good. Okay, so I just want to, oh, I forgot something. I'll be right back, just 1 second.
This is cool.
I forgot my brain. Today we're going to talk all about the brain and about how the brain works. The brain is really the most important part of your body. I think it's one of the most important and interesting parts of the entire body. And in fact, the brain is so important, it does all the things that are important to you, like seeing, hearing, all of our senses. All the brain taking that information from the outside world. Our brain has to understand what's happening in the outside world, and then we have to do things so that we can survive in the world. So for example, if someone was going to take this plastic brain that I have right here and throw it at me, I would either want my brain to tell me to get out of the way, or for my brain to have my body catch it. And so my brain has to process all that information coming from the outside world and make decisions so that I can survive. My brain is also very important for my emotions. So if this brain hit me in the head, that might make me mad or sad, but that's my brain trying to help me interpret what's going on in the outside world. My brain also helps me move. It also works for some of those things that we don't even have to think about, like controlling our respiration and controlling our heart rate. So that's just a few of the reasons why I think the brain is the most important part of your body. I just let a few more people in. The brain is also very important for thinking, planning, and problem solving. And those are all things that help you get along in the world. And hopefully the words that are coming out of my mouth, floating across the internet, going into your ears, that's helping you understand what's going on in the outside world. And what we're going to do today is tell you a little bit more about how the brain works, but also how the brain can be fooled. And along the way, there are going to be some questions that I have for you to find out what you know about the nervous system. I know that in school, some of your teachers have already been teaching you a bit about how the brain works. I'm going to find out how much you can remember about some of those things. And if you haven't yet started your study about the nervous system, I hope that you'll learn some things as well. So here's the first thing that you need to do on your piece of paper. So here's a picture, and what you see on the slide here is if this was a section of the brain, this is my brain, this is the front, this is the back of the brain. What you're seeing on this picture is a slice right down the middle. So right down the middle, and this is what you would be seeing right down the middle. And you see those yellow lines? What I want you to do is I want you to try to remember or figure out what each of these arrows are pointing to. I'm going to give you only about, maybe about 2 minutes, and I see a big group of kids there too. See if you can know what this outside part of the brain is. It's that wrinkled part of the brain here. Does anybody know the name of that area? You can go ahead and type it into that chat box if you think you know the name. Or if you got a piece of paper there, go ahead and write it on that piece of paper there. So I'll give you about a couple minutes. So the first question is, what is this outside part of the brain? What is this outside part of the brain called? Okay, you can talk to the people sitting next to you, or just if you're at home, you can write it down on a piece of paper. Okay, what is that outside part of the brain? I see some people are coming up with cerebral cortex. Some people say cerebrum. Any other guesses there? Yeah, so I see a couple more people write cerebrum. Somebody doesn't know. Tissue, it's a good guess. Cerebellum is another guess. This outside part of the brain with all those wrinkles, that's called the cerebral cortex, or some people will call that general area the cerebrum. So cerebrum or cerebral cortex, I think those are both the right answers. And those folds that you see there, those folds are areas are called the folds are called sulci, or sulcus is for one, and the bumps are called gyri. And you see all those folds there? Those folds allow you to get a large surface area into the volume of your skull. So if you were going to unwrap that cortex would be almost the size of a newspaper. And there's no way that you could fit that cortex into your skull if it was unfolded. And so that's how your brain is all folded like that, so you can get a large surface area into the small part of your skull. Okay, so it increases the amount of surface area that you can get into your skull. All right, so that was this outside part here. Now, what about this area right here in the middle of the brain there? This yellow arrow is pointing to this area. Does anybody know what the name of this part of the brain is? I'll give you a hint. It starts with the letter T. A lot of people don't know. Does anybody have a guess? Some people, Mary and Joshua, think it's the thalamus. Katie thinks it's the thalamus. Gracie also thinks it's the thalamus. And all those people, they are right. That part of the area of the brain, that's the thalamus. It sends information to the cortex. It gets information up from the spinal cord to the thalamus. And then the thalamus sends signals to that cerebral cortex that we just talked about. All right, so that area is the thalamus. What about this area here? It's just below the thalamus, and that's the hint, that it's below the thalamus. Does anybody know the name of this area here? And again, the big hint is it's below the thalamus. It also is very involved with controlling hormone release and things like that. A couple of people are writing thalamus, hypothalamus, hippocampus. Cami says hypo means under, and Cami's right. That was the big hint, that that area is below the thalamus, so it is the hypothalamus. So that's the hypothalamus. So again, cortex, thalamus, and then that's the hypothalamus right there. And then this part over here, is in the middle part of the brain, and it has kind of a simple name because it's the middle part of the brain. It's called the midbrain, and it has a couple different areas to it, but the general area is called the midbrain. And then this part of the brain, which is this arrow here is pointing to, this area here, and it's also right over here. So again, here's the front of the brain, the back of the brain. This area here, it kind of has two lobes, kind of like or two hemispheres, like the cortex. But this area here is another area. It comes from a Latin word meaning little brain. And here it is here, this general area here. Does anybody know the name of this area? A couple people, Andrew wrote cerebellum, Joshua wrote cerebellum, and they would all be right. this area here is called the cerebellum. It's very important for controlling movement and for balance and posture as well. All right, so again, just to review real quickly, here's the cortex, the thalamus, the hypothalamus, the midbrain. Here is the cerebellum. And then one more arrow here that I'm pointing to, this general area from about this area here to the top of the spinal cord. So here's the bottom of the brain. This area right here, and I'll give you a hint for this name. It's like the bottom part of a flower. What would that be, do you think? It would be the bottom part of a flower. So that would be Logan and Noah wrote brainstem, Angela wrote brainstem, Reese and brainstem, Caitlin wrote brainstem, Jackson brainstem. Yeah, this area would be the brainstem there. And the area of the brainstem, that has very important functions. And if that area is damaged, you'll be in a pretty bad shape, because this area of the brain, the brainstem, helps control respiration and also controls heart rate. So this area is very, very important for those vital functions for keeping you alive. So that's the brainstem. Good. And so again, here's my plastic model of a brain. Think about how much the brain weighs and whether there are any differences between how much a brain weighs between boys and girls, men and women. And let's try one more slide here. So here are all the areas that we just talked about. And so what I want you to do now is think about how much the average brain weighs. And over on the left there, you see a couple choices that you have 1 pound, 3 pounds, 5 pounds, and 7 pounds. So how much do you think the average brain weighs? And you can either talk about it between yourselves or write in that chat box what you think it's 1 pound, 3 pounds, 5 pounds, or 7 pounds. So a lot of people say it was 3 pounds, 3 to 5 pounds. Most people say it's 3 pounds. See Dylan and Kellen say it's 3 pounds. Those people are typing pretty fast, or I can't keep up with everyone. But it looks like most people say it's either 3 pounds or 5 pounds. Most people are saying it's, I'm looking at the chat boxes and the chat answers coming in. Most people are saying that it's B, 3 pounds. And the correct answer is about 3 pounds. So raise your hand if you came up with 3 pounds. Good, I see some people in Andrew's class that are raising their hands for 3 pounds. That's right. The average adult human brain weighs about 3 pounds. Now, let's talk about differences between boys and girls, men and women. What do you think? Do you think that the average weight of a man's brain is more than an average woman's brain? Or do you think a girl's brain weighs more than a boy's brain? Or do you think that they weigh about the same? So think about that for yourself. Do male brains weigh more than female brains? Do female brains weigh more than male brains? Or do they weigh about the same? I'll just let you think about that for a little while. So most people say, I'm getting a lot of answers on the chat box saying that they think that male and female brains weigh about the same. I'm just, again, I'm kind of looking at you, and I'm also looking at the chat box at the going back and forth. And it looks like a lot of people say that male and female brain weigh about the same. Well, let's look at some real data. So if you look at this graph here, on the x-axis is how old someone is. On the y-axis is how much a brain weighs. 3 pounds is about 1.4 kilograms. So again, remember we talked about how much an average brain weighs. Weighs about 3 pounds. So that's the same as 1.4 kilograms. So that's about right here. The average brain weight for adults is about 1.4 kilograms or 3 pounds. And what I've done here on this picture is I plotted male brain weights in red, and in blue are female brain weights. So again, on the x-axis here is a newborn baby, and over here is someone who's 86 years old, all the way over on the right side of the graph. And if you look at these bars here, I think that you can all see that the red bars at every single age are higher than the blue bars, which indicate female brains. And so what this graph shows is something interesting, isn't it? This graph shows that male brains weigh more than female brains. I once went out to a school, and this was, I think, a group of fourth graders. And I was showing the same graph to the fourth graders. And they could see that the red bars, which were for the male brain weights, were bigger than the female brain weights. And when I asked the students, what does this graph show? One boy raised his hand. And when I asked what this graph shows, the boy was very confident. And he said, this graph shows that men are smarter than women. And I said, well, that doesn't really show that either. I didn't want to make fun of him or anything like that. And I said something about, like, that's an interesting interpretation of this data. But this doesn't say anything about how smart someone is. All this graph shows is how much the brain weighs when you put it on a scale. It doesn't say anything about a person's personality. It doesn't say anything about a person's intelligence. And I want to show you one more picture. And it looks like Audrey, through the chat box, she had a very interesting observation. I just was reading in the chat box. She observed that when someone is about 15, 16, 17 years old, if you look at this graph, the brain weight peaks. That is, it gets as high as it's going to be. And then if you look real carefully, it actually goes down a little bit. So someone who's 86 years old, their brains are a little bit smaller than when they were younger, right? And that's a very good observation. And mainly that's because brains do get smaller and they weigh less as people get older. It's mainly because the brain loses a bit of water. And that's why the brain get a little bit lighter when people get older. But I want to show you one more picture. And on this next graph, this graph shows the exact same data, the exact same brain weights that you saw on the other slide, except this graph is plotted a little differently. What this graph shows is how much the brain is in proportion to the whole body. So for those of you that are starting to do fractions in school, this is how big the brain is, the fraction of the brain weight compared to the whole body. So in other words, if my brain weighs 3 pounds and my body weighs 150 pounds, that means my brain is 2% of my total body weight, okay? So it's the ratio of how large the brain is in proportion to the whole body. So if you look at this picture, for adults, an adult brain is about 2% of a person's total body weight. But if you look here, look, and so in this picture, what differences do you see between male brains and female brains in relationship to the brain in comparison to the body? So what do you see here? You might see that for adults, adult women have a larger brain in proportion to their body than men. Okay, so if there is a woman the same age as me, the same body weight as me, on average, she would have a bigger brain than me. Does that mean that she's smarter than me? I would say no, because if you look at this picture here, look at a newborn baby, those bars all the way over to the left. Here's a newborn baby. Newborn babies, their brains are almost 13% of their total body weight. So they've got giant brains and giant heads for those tiny little bodies, right? And just because they have a large brain in proportion to their whole body, it doesn't mean that they're smarter than you are, who have smaller brains in relationship to your body. And so the next, what I want you to do is, next time you're outside and maybe you see a baby, take a good look at that baby's head, and don't get too weird when you look at the baby. But you might notice that those babies, they have those giant balloon heads, right? They've got giant heads for those small little bodies that they are. And their brains are 13% of what they weigh. While for you, your brains are 4% or less for your total body weight. So just because Babies have large brains in proportion to their body. It doesn't mean that they're smarter than you. Just because someone has a brain size larger than someone else, it doesn't say anything about how smart someone is. And it kind of is an interesting question is, what does it mean to be smart? Some people might say that, oh, if you get good grades, that means you're smart. Some people might say, oh, if you get a good grade on a test, that means that you're smart. Some people might say, if you can make 10 free throws in a row, that's kind of a smart. Some people might say, if you can figure out a bus schedule, then that makes you smart. So there's all kinds of different ways that you can measure smart. And I'm not sure that there's actually a great way to figure that out or to say that, that one person is smarter than another person. All right. So Madeline is having trouble following the conversation. I'll try to talk a little bit slower. So let's talk about what a brain is made up of. Brains are made up of special cells. Those cells are called nerve cells. Those nerve cells are those that send messages between other parts of the brain. And you can fit a whole lot of nerve cells into one human brain. And think to yourself, how many neurons do you think can fit into one brain? Now remember, neurons are really, really small, and you can only see them with a microscope. But how many neurons, nerve cells, do you think can fit into one human brain? So Gracie said about 2 million. Any other guesses? Somebody says trillions. Nora says, I can't, that's a 2 with a lot of zeros followed by it. Marcy says billions. Dylan is about 10 billion. Kate says 100 billion. And Kate's really, really close. In fact, just up until a few years ago, the estimates were that you can get 100 billion nerve cells in one brain. The current estimates have been lowered a little bit, that we think that one human brain has an average of about 86 billion nerve cells. And that's a lot of nerve cells that can fit into one human brain. And each of those nerve cells talks to lots of other nerve cells. And that's an interesting question, is if there's 86 billion nerve cells, how can nerve cells talk to each other? And in fact, nerve cells, they don't actually touch each other. So in this picture here, you see 2 nerve cells with dendrites that receive information from other cells. They send information to a cell body. The cell body then sends information down an axon, and then that axon ends in a terminal. But where this terminal is trying to talk to the next nerve cell, those cells actually don't touch. There's a small little space between nerve cells. So how can one nerve cell talk to another nerve cell if they don't actually touch? Anybody have a guess for that? And again, you can type it into the little chat box there. How can one nerve cell talk to another nerve cell if there's a space between them? So Kate writes chemical messages. Someone else wrote electrical impulses and electricity, chemical connections. They fire messages, chemical messages. Yeah, you guys are on the right track. And someone else wrote electrical and chemical messages. And it is a combination of electrical and chemical messages. The way that nerve cells work is they generate a little bit of electricity. Not the same kind of electricity that you get out of the wall, but electricity nonetheless. Inside of a nerve cell, that signal travels down an axon. When it gets to the end of a nerve cell, it causes chemicals to come out. And those chemicals are called neurotransmitters. They float across that small little space in between nerve cells. And when they're picked up by the next nerve cell, it causes an electrical signal inside of itself. And then that message can continue on and on and on and on. So inside of a nerve cell is an electrical signal. Between nerve cells is a chemical message. And that's how your brain works. So if you don't remember anything else from today, if you remember that inside of a nerve cell, it's an electrical message, and between nerve cells, it's a chemical message, I'll be happy. All right. So now that you know more about brains, on this picture here, you have 6 brains, and on the left, there are 6 animals, and each of those 6 brains that you see belong to those 6 animals. So on your piece of paper, what I want you to do is try to figure out which brains go with which of those animals. So on your piece of paper, you can write down A, B, C, D, E, F, and then beside those letters, see if you can match those 6 brains with those animals there. So I'll give you, you got to work kind of fast, but I'll give you about 2 or 3 minutes. And here's a big hint for you. So I was saying that this is a human brain. So there's a big hint for you. I'll give you some other hints. So in all of these brain pictures here, the brain is pointing to the left. This is the spinal cord on each of them. Here's the spinal cord. Here's the cerebellum. Here's the cerebellum on each of these. So whether or how the spinal cord lines up for with the rest of the brain might give you a hint whether the animal walks on 2 legs, 4 legs, or maybe it swims. Okay? How is the spinal cord oriented relative to the brain? Because in humans, we walk on 2 legs, and our spinal cord has to go down our back. So that might give you an idea what these 6 animals are. So you can keep on working. Also, another hint is, look at here. Here's a scale bar. So all these brains are not the same size. So if you look at the scale bar there, that will give you an idea how big 1 centimeter is. So this brain is much smaller than this brain, right? This brain is smaller than this brain because you can see the scale bar there. All right, people still working? So again, try to figure out which of those 6 brains match up with those 6 animals there. Looks like Brian thinks A is a sheep. Brian, I would change your answer. Dylan thinks that F is a human. Dylan, I would suggest you change your answer for F as well. Looks like some people think that A is a cat. Some people think E is a monkey. Some people think D is a human. Some people think that B is the human. Some people think that A is the chimp. Okay, I'll give you about 30 more seconds, so finish up quickly. Here's one more look at this brain. There you go. Ooh. Okay, still see some more answers coming in. All right, so we're going to go through the answers here. So we'll start with the first animal here. This animal here is the cat. The cat brain is A. So the cat brain is A. The next animal we'll try is the sheep. The sheep brain is not A because the cat brain is A. The sheep brain is E. The sheep brain is E. And you can see in that sheep brain how the spinal cord is on the same level, the same plane as the brain, because a sheep walks on 4 legs. And so the spinal cord exits the brain in that same line. So it's got to be on that same plane as the brain because it walks on 4 legs. So the cat brain is A, the sheep brain is E, Let's skip down to the dolphin brain. So look in your answers. The dolphin brain is either C, B, D, or F. The dolphin brain is C. The dolphin brain is C. Yep, the dolphin brain is C. So we have a human, chimpanzee, and the monkey brains. And on purpose, when I made this slide, I put B, D, and F, one on top of the other. And if you look at them carefully, you can actually see that B, D, and F, they kind of look very similar to one another, don't they? Some of you may have been studying the different lobes of the brain. And in fact, you can see some of those lobes are very, very similar in these three brains, where this is the frontal lobe here. Here's the frontal lobe. Here's the frontal lobe on this brain. Here's the temporal lobe here on this brain. Here's the temporal lobe on this D brain. And here's the temporal lobe on this brain here. And also look at how this spinal cord exits from those three brains. It's all very, very similar, isn't it? And look where the cerebellum is. Remember, here's the cerebellum here. Here it is right here, tucked underneath this occipital lobe, which is important for vision, in this brain here, in this brain here, and in this brain here. They're all very, very similar to one another. So B, D, and F are chimpanzee, human, and monkey. Here are all the answers here. Did anybody get them all right? Yeah. So again, on this human brain, here's the frontal lobe, the temporal lobe, the parietal lobe, and also the occipital lobe right over there on that human brain. Okay, let's go on. I hope everyone's following. What we're going to do right now is a couple experiments to test some of your sensory abilities. What we're going to do is find out how your senses can actually be tricked, that your brain is just trying to help you. It's just trying to figure out what's going on in the outside world, but sometimes it's pretty easy to trick. And so what I want you to do here, and you can do this on your own by following this little bouncing arrow here. And what I want you to do on this slide here is just tell me what color you see. Okay, so for example, when I'll tell you when to go, but these colors are just regular colors. There's nothing strange about these colors, but this is, to me, this is blue, green, red, yellow, right? Blue, green, red, yellow, and then green, orange, blue, pink. What I want you to do is say out loud what colors you see. And as I'm pointing to each of these squares, say out loud what color you see. Okay? So here we go. Ready? 1, 2, 3, go. Blue, green, red. And that last one is black. Okay? Did everyone do that okay? It should be pretty easy if you know your colors, and I'm sure you all know your colors. Okay? Let's do it one more time on a different one. What I want you to do here is do not read the word. Rather, what I want you to do is say what color each word is printed in. And this one is pretty easy because the words are printed in the same color that they say. But I don't want you to read the word. Rather, what I want you to do is tell me what color each word is printed in. So, for example, this one here, oh, that's kind of blue. That one here, that's pink. That one here is green. Don't read the word. Tell me what color the word is printed in. And again, we'll go over from, start with the red, we'll go over here, and then we'll drop down here. Okay, so again, say out loud what color this arrow is pointing to. Okay, ready? Here we go. 1, 2, 3, go. Red, green. Okay? Is that easy for everyone? Should be pretty easy. I mean, I can do it pretty easily. Red, green, blue, black, pink, orange, red, blue. Pretty easy. Let's try it one more time. All right, we'll try it with this one now. So again, I don't want you to read the word. I want you to tell me what color the word is printed in. So for example, this one is blue, right? This one over here, this one is red, right? I know that you just showed, and I think most of you didn't have any problem with the other two. You were able to tell me what color you saw. So I want you to do the same thing here. Okay, ready to go? I'll even give you the first two. The first two are blue and red. Okay, here we go. One, and I'll go at the same speed that I did for the other ones. Ready? Here we go. 1, 2, 3, go. Blue. And the last one is black. How was that? I see somebody, right? Gracie just wrote "gah," which I think means that she had some problems doing it. Eric thinks it was easy to do. A lot of people said that they messed up, and a lot of people thought that that was really hard. Well, let's try it one more time. I have a new one for you. Let's try it one more time. Oh, I guess we don't have that one. Oh, we have this one. So let's try this one. So I want you to do the same thing. So the previous one was this one. Now here's a second one that or actually a fourth one that I want you to try. So again, just tell me what color these are printed in. Okay? So again, this one is blue, this one is orange, that one is green. Okay? Here we go. Ready? 1, 2, 3, go. Blue, red. How was that? Were you able to do this one? Most people find this one is easier than that other one. But look at very carefully at this picture. This one is red. Look, it's R-E-D. This word here is green, G-R-E-E-N. Aren't these two the same? You might find this one easier because these words really had no meaning to you. And that's what's happening in the brain. Because language is so important to us, it's very difficult to even say what color we see. And that's why your brain isn't very good at doing two things at once. Here, you can't even say what color you see just because there's another word there. And so your brain really is not good at doing two things at one time. And this is a good demonstration of how your brain is not very good at multitasking. All right, let's try this one. What I want you to do on this slide here is I want you to stare right where that sort of that bluish turquoise, yellow, and black meet in this flag. So I want you to stare right there for about 10 seconds. So keep on staring there. If you blink, go right back to that flag there. Okay, keep on staring. I'm going to count backwards from 10. Keep on staring. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Keep on looking. Keep on looking. Blink once or twice. And what did you see? Did you see a flag? Yeah, you should have seen a red, white, and blue flag. Even though there is no red, white, and blue flag there. Yeah, a lot of people, Wyatt said American flag, Christine said American flag. Somebody said they didn't see anything there. But most people see that red, white, and blue flag, even though it's not there. And if you still see it, don't worry, it will go away soon. There's no long-lasting damage caused. That flag will disappear in a little bit. But that's because your visual system adapts to that turquoise, yellow, and black flag. And the visual system stops sending signals about turquoise, yellow, and black. So when you look at this white background, what your brain is trying to interpret is this white background minus turquoise, yellow, and black. And it sees that, or your brain sees that, as red, white, and blue. Again, because those turquoise, yellow, and black signals stop sending signals. And that's why you see the red, white, and blue flag. All right, here's another one for you. Here are 3 arcs. So these 3 arcs, we're going to make complete circles. So you're going to follow those circles all the way around and make big circles out of those 3 arcs. Just continue those lines around. Which would make the biggest circle? A, B, or C? So Madeline and McKenna say C. Cameron says A. Katie says A. Gracie says A. Dylan says A. Audrey says C. No one is saying B, which is, I guess, good. But let me show you the same picture. Would you change your answer if I showed you this? Now what do you say? This is the exact same picture. The only thing I've done here is I blocked the 2 sides with these blue boxes. Now what do you say? I'll tell you exactly what these 3 arcs are. These 3 arcs come from the exact same circle. I made this picture by drawing A, and then I just copied and pasted it twice, and then I erased the sides. A, B, and C come from the exact same circle. But your brain makes a mistake when it sees this picture. But in fact, A, B, and C are exactly the same. They come from the exact same circle. All right, how about this one? Those thick lines that are going across. Are those thick lines exactly parallel to each other? Or does it kind of look like the middle is kind of bowed out a bit? And you now know that you can't always trust what you see. But what does it look to you? Does it look like the middle part is kind of bowed out? And I think most of you probably it probably looks to most of you like the center part is wider than the edges of those lines. And in fact, you now know that this is an illusion, I hope. And when I remove the background, you can see that they're perfectly straight. So your brain is just trying to help you interpret what you see, but it doesn't always interpret what's actually out there in the correct way. Here's another one. So that square inside of those circles, does it look like that square is perfectly straight on all sides? Or does it look like the tops and the sides are kind of bashed in a little bit? And again, you now know that it's an illusion, but what does it look like to you? Does it look like it's a perfect square, or does it look like the sides and the tops are kind of bashed in a bit? Yeah, Joshua says it looks a little bit curvy. Christine says it's a little bit bowed. Andrew says it looks like a bent square. Yeah, you know that it's an illusion, but your brain can't stop you seeing it being bent like that. And in fact, when you look at it without that background, you can see that it's a perfect square. All I did was remove that background there. All right, let's try another one. So on this one, how many of you see a white triangle? Like a lot of people see it as an upside down triangle there, an upside down white triangle. Yeah, you see that? Most people can see that there's a white triangle in the middle of that picture there. But what happens when I remove black lines? So what happens when I do this? What happened to the white triangle? I didn't touch any white triangle. All I did was remove black lines. So what I'll tell you, what I think is going on, is that there is no white triangle there. And in fact, watch what I do here. Oop. Here, all I did was I added black lines. And now all I'm doing is I'm removing black lines. So I will say to you that there is no triangle there, and there never was a triangle up there on the screen. Rather, that white triangle was created by your brain. Your brain was just trying to help you interpret what your eyes, the information from your eyes. But there was no triangle there. There never was. Would everybody agree with me that there is no white triangle? There was never a white triangle there, and the white triangle instead was up there. All right, how about this one? So if A was going to go across the page here, it was going across the screen, would it perfectly line up with B? Would it perfectly line up with C? Or maybe I'm trying to trick you and it won't match up anywhere. What do you think? So again, A is going across that bar there, would it be a perfect line with B, or would it be a perfect line with C? So Gracie says B. A lot of people say it's B. Audrey says C. Josh says B. Casey said it would go to both. It can't go to both because it's a perfectly straight line. So it can't go to both. It's a perfectly straight line. Some people say it would go in between. A lot of people say B. A lot of people say C. Some people say no match. So we're getting answers all over the place. Some people are saying it's B. Some people are saying it's C. Some people say we'll go in the middle, and some people say it won't match at all. So let's look at the, let's take away that box or put in the line, and let's see exactly where it matches. It will be a perfect match with B. And to me, that was really interesting because when I was looking at everyone's answers, some people would say it would match up with C. Some people said it would match up with B, and some people said it didn't match up with any either B or C. And why is that? Aren't we all looking at the same picture? Why are we coming up with different answers if we're looking at the exact same picture? I would say it's because everyone's brain is a little bit different, and they're trying to interpret what they see in a different way. Some of you thought, well, maybe I'm trying to trick you by trying to trick you. And maybe that altered your perception of perhaps what you saw. So everyone's brain is different, works in a different way, and that allows us to interpret the world in different ways. And here's another way that you can look at things differently. These two pictures are exactly the same. And in fact, you can get one of the pictures to change by kind of looking at by tilting your head upside down. So that this picture will become this picture if you tilt your head upside down. But they're the exact same picture, just rotated 180 degrees. Yeah, some people say that this one kind of looks like an old lady or an old woman. Some people say that she looks like a queen with a crown here, and she's kind of frowning here. These are her eyes looking this way. And some people see this as a younger woman looking off into the distance here. Here's her neck here. But they're the same picture, just looked at in a slightly different way. All right, let's look at one more. So some of you may have seen this one before. This is the classic one where there's a duck and a rabbit. And a lot of people see the duck first, where this is the duck's bill, and this is the duck's eye looking in this direction. But the rabbit has its ears kind of pulled down, looking in the opposite direction. Here's the rabbit's mouth, and here's the rabbit's ears kind of pulled down over there. And so, yes, it's both a duck and a rabbit. It just depends on how you look at it. And here are two lines, and here's your brain trying to work. And it's just trying to make sense of the information that it has. But in this case, it doesn't have all of the information that is usually there. And your brain can try to figure out what those lines say. Can you figure out what those lines say? What might the top line say? So some people say, I love school. I love school. And what about the bottom line? What do you think the bottom line says? So again, your brain doesn't have all the information, but can it work out that puzzle? Joshua says neuroscience is fun. Yeah, I just like to see you type out the word I love school. But in fact, what do these lines really say? That's what they say. They actually don't say anything. It's actually just a whole bunch of letters that are put there to make your brain try to interpret what it sees. But in fact, these two lines say nothing. And you can kind of play around with that too. All you need to do is get the letters and cover up half of them, and you can make different sentences, and you can try to see if you can make people read a sentence without all of those correct letters. But again, it's just the brain trying to make sense of the world, just trying to help you get along. So I hope that you've had some fun. Unfortunately, we couldn't all get together here at the University of Washington, but we'll try next year to have everyone get here. If you're at home or if you're at school and you still want to do some more experiments, there's a whole bunch of experiments on my website, Neuroscience for Kids. I know it's a long URL there, but all you have to do is just type Neuroscience for Kids and experiments, and that will take you to this my website, where there's lots of online things to do. There's also lots of experiments that you can do at home if you want to learn more about the nervous system and things like that. What I want to do now is, if you have some questions for me, I'm going to stay online. I've muted everyone's microphones because 100 or 200 or maybe more people online, it would just be too many people talking at the same time. So if you want to type in that box in the chat box, I can try to answer some of your questions. Otherwise, get on with your day, and hopefully I'll see you next year. Or you can also write me your questions directly. That's my email address right there. But I hope that you've had a great time learning about the nervous system. This is International Brain Awareness Week, and I hope that you've enjoyed learning about the brain. So I'll stay online for a little while. The rest of you, hopefully you have a good day. And hopefully I'll talk to you, or I'll see you next year. So bye to the people that are leaving now. I'll stay online and I'll answer some questions in the chat box.